Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Saskatchewan Independent Film Awards short film panel. Before we get started, some introductions are in order. So my name is Sophie, and I am the current Vice President of the Saskatchewan Film Board, and I am very excited to be the moderator of this event. I am joined by 8 incredibly talented filmmakers that are nominated in the short film category today. Gavin Baird with My Masterpiece, Mike Rollo with Eidolon, Dianne Ouellette with Elu Patamik, Rob White with The Millionaire's Burger, Dylan Hryciuk with Eden Page Save Me, and Marzia Kamyabi with On Edge, Jeffrey Altwasser, and Jeremy Davis with The Antler. All right, so thank you guys very much for joining me this evening. To start us off, I'd like to go around, kind of round table, and get you all to tell us a little bit about your project and maybe the process of making it. And Dylan, you're unmuted, so I'm gonna pick on you first.
Okay. Well, my project is, I guess, a little different from the rest because it's a music video. So it's client-based. I was approached to make a music video for a 13-year-old girl, which sounds like a very weird task. And the family wanted something in the vein of stuff they've seen from me before, which is usually very moody and depressing. That's kind of my go-to, I guess. And so their daughter wrote a song when she was, I don't know, 12 or 11. And it was about her friend who was self-harming. And she wrote this song just to express like how she felt about it and kind of through the eyes of her friend, and she wished she could do something for her friend, and she wrote the song for her friend, and her parents were just very like amazed by how empathetic she was for a little girl, and the fact that their daughter and her friends are dealing with that at such a young age. So they thought the goal of it was not to like make their daughter a superstar. It was like, let's make something that could be impactful to kids like her, and we could maybe get it into schools and stuff. And yeah, we approached it as if it was a short film. There's a little bit of performance, but I would say it's one of our most narrative-driven projects where we're telling 3 stories or vignettes about teenagers struggling with different things in a high school setting. So there's kind of like bullying, there's peer pressure, there's kind of identity issues. And yeah, it's just, it doesn't necessarily have answers for what it is, but it's more showcasing, you know, the things that students I've gone through, some of our actors have gone through, and I think a lot of people could relate to just seeing the film. And yeah, it was just about capturing what really goes on in hopefully an empathetic way. Yeah.
Oh, that's really awesome to hear. Why don't I pass it down to the Antler, the 2 of you guys there.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Hello. Can you hear us?
So can you guys maybe...
Hi, can you hear us?
Oh yeah, we can hear you just fine. If you want to tell us a little bit about your project and
wonderful.
The process of making it.
Yeah, sure. So Jeff and I have produced a couple of Westerns over the years. I only just recently graduated from the UR's film program. So these are films we kind of usually make over the this summer when we're free and we don't really have access to a lot of resources. So we usually kind of just talk to our friends and take a look at like what we have to kind of make a film with. And you know, I grew up on a reserve, and my family is has a big parcel of land that we can kind of just play around in. So we kind of wanted to make use of the wilderness. And yeah, Jeff was kind of really gung-ho to make a Western, and we had the perfect setting to do so. Yeah, did you want to add something to that?
We shot it the day after we did the one take Super 8, and didn't take more than a day to film. Yeah. Ava Wilde did the score.
Hmm. Cool. What about you, Gavin?
Our short is about a ailing fashion designer who's connected to a pair of pants that he makes. And yeah, we filmed it this past January for 2 days. And yeah, the idea, well, one of my filmmaking friends, a guy named Paul O, he made this really cool 3-minute kind of like body horror short. And I don't know, I really thought it was cool, and it was like really gross and disgusting and awesome. And then I wanted to make something like that. So then I challenged myself to make something as short as possible. But it ended up not being a horror. Yeah.
What about you, Rob?
My film is called The Millionaire's Hamburger, and it's about a hamburger that you can't buy unless you have $1 million. Basically, it only costs about $12, but you can only get it with a certified bank statement of $1 million or more. And we shot it at the Hunter Gatherer restaurant last November. It might have actually been 1 year ago this weekend, but yeah, we shot it as kind of an idea we've had for a really long time. And it was shot as a very simple idea because it's just a few people talking. And I have a group of filmmaker guys. We're called Art on Fire, and we have been making films for a long time. And we kind of have been doing a lot of very weird stuff that isn't like straight comedy. It's been going very into like, watch this thing for 10 minutes and there's like one joke at the end that's not actually that funny. So we want to bring it back a little bit into like more traditional kind of comedy stuff. And honestly, I'm surprised that so many people like it because it's very not complicated or anything. And it makes me feel like, oh, all that complicated stuff I did, people didn't like that. So didn't get any awards. So yeah, I don't know. It's a fun film you can watch. It took about a day to shoot. And yeah, just a good time.
Yes, that's awesome. What about yourself, Dianne?
So Anlu Powatamek means wolf dream or I dream of wolves. The language can have, similar interpretations. I worked on the film for over 3 years as part of my MFA in media production final project. And I went to film wolves and bison in different locations. I based the film on dreams I had growing up of running with wolves and hunting bison. And then I took other actual like real life stories, and I started to think about encounters with wolves over the years. And then, this film just kind of came together as a statement on, researching my Métis heritage and ancestry and how I need to speak for, the non-human and my ancestors who have passed away, who, went to residential schools and my grandmother who was murdered. So I took this film and I just created this silent, poetic piece. And near the end of the film, you'll see that the wolf looks like it's speaking and we can't hear it. So it's like we have to speak for, the lost people and the animals that do exist now. And the prairie wolves were hunted to extinction as well. So that was part of what I wanted to do with this film. So it kind of speaks to genocide as well. So that's my film. But it did take me 3 years to make.
Yeah, it's definitely a very powerful film, for sure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Marzia.
Okay, so everybody knows Saskatchewan as a flat land. I just want to prove them wrong. So I found a huge hill and had to make a movie to tell them, no, there is a hill here. I live in Pilot Butte and there is a big hill here. And I used to just walk up and down and think that there's something must happen here, a story, because I used to see rabbits there. They're playful and naughty and, everywhere. And I was thinking there must be something like a conversation, between them. and it came up with a story between grandmother and her grandson. And yeah, that was it. And I love the sunset of Saskatchewan. It's so beautiful. We need to see more of that, you know? Yeah.
Yes, I agree. And last but definitely not least, I'll pass it over to you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks. My film, Idalong, is a film based from my experience at the Independent Imaging Retreat in Toronto, also affectionately known as Philip Hoffman's Film Farm. And the structure of the film is also inspired by a poem by Walt Whitman of the same title. And in the film, I'm essentially following light and how light ignites spaces, how it spills into spaces, how it shapes and forms textures in the landscape. And the whole film was shot with a Bolex. A lot of the images that you see is in-camera editing. So all the effects that you see is all in-camera editing. So very little post-production, and everything is hand processed. So not sent to the lab, it's all DIY at home, using traditional chemistry, but also organic methods as well. So some of the film was developed with oregano. And you'll notice that with the textures, because some of the highlights are a little bit more sepia toned because of the eco-chemistry, but it produces these wonderful effects. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's my film.
Cool. Yeah, that's a feat in of itself there. Another question for the group. What was your biggest challenge when making this film? Any takers to go first? Go for it, Marzia.
Wind. Wind killed us. Yeah, just it knocked down one of my actor, and yeah, and still it's in post-production, working on it. A sound engineer is working on it, and yeah, just the wind. It was the biggest challenge for us.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure some of the filmmakers here can understand that challenge for sure. Anyone else want to volunteer, or Dianne?
Sure, I'll agree with the wind. I was in on the prairies a lot, Grasslands National Park, so it's just like white, no hills. So it was like wind, and the challenge was actually trying to find, the bison. The wolves were not as much of a challenge because I worked with a educational facility, and I could walk with the wolves and be near them. But bison in the grasslands, it seemed that every time I went to the grasslands, they would be like in the hills. It's like they were running away from me, probably because they knew I was hunting them in my dreams, I think. But I was just like, and then the one time I was filming, like the challenge was so funny because here I have this like telephoto lens on and I'm filming and I'm like, and I'm hitting my partner and I'm like, Caleb, the bison are getting closer. Oh my God, they're too close. And then he goes, pushes the lens down. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, so there were so many challenges. Like I had fun, but finding the bison, the best location for bison is actually Elk Island National Park. But I didn't use any of that footage in this film. I wanted to focus on the grasslands for that one. But yeah, it was challenging, definitely.
Yeah, I can imagine.
COVID kind of got in the way of ours a little bit because we were supposed to film this way more elaborate ending. But we had to wait until spring for it to happen. We shot it in November. So we're like, we'll just put this on the shelf for a little bit. And then spring kind of came and went to nowhere. So we just kind of abandoned it. We're just like, we'll just finish it with whatever because it's not worth it. So that was one of the things we had trouble with.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think once again, we all are feeling that COVID pinch for sure. What about Jeffrey and Jeremy?
Yeah. So I would say ours, probably not the most dramatic, but I'm sure everyone here can relate, is that we kind of didn't have a lot of time. We had our friends out there, but it was more of a friend kind of a exchange, hung out with them, we gave them food, and for a weekend we chilled with them while they filmed with us. But we only had a day to film literally everything because we were also limited on time as well as resources. So yeah, definitely time.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Dylan or Mike or Gavin, any challenges on your projects?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges that I have probably on every project is finding locations. I'm sure everyone struggles with that. And on our project, we had about 13 unique locations or something like that. And getting in a school to film a crazy project was very difficult. We spent probably a month just trying to go through all the proper channels, going to schools, meeting the principals of different schools, and kept getting turned down for various reasons, or like, oh, maybe later, or now's not a good time. And eventually we got into a school for just these certain rooms. And then I knew a guy who could get me into hallways. And then I had another teacher that was like, oh, I'll get you into this workout room. And we had to amalgamate the school because that's just what you have to do in film. But yeah, it was a challenge, but it paid off very well, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Mike or Gavin?
Yeah. First, I want to echo what Dianne said. I shot a film in the grasslands searching for bison. It was like the hardest thing to do. Like I wasted a whole day trying to find bison. Like they're there, but they're in the distance. They don't want to approach you. You don't really want to approach them too much. And so I sympathize, Dianne. I totally understand where you're coming from. Yeah, I guess the biggest challenge with mine was the processing of the film, just because there were a few new methods, especially with the eco-chemistry, that resulted in unpredictable images. And so some of the times when you lift it from the bath and you notice like all these streaks, unintentional streaks, and your heart kind of sinks because it's like, oh, there goes my images. But then when you review it later, you can figure out how to work with them in post. But yeah, it's a little bit of the unpredictability of the processing that was a big challenge. So you kind of just have to leave it open to chance operations a bit, where anything can go. But yeah, it's workable, like in the end.
Mm-hmm. And Gavin, do you have any challenges or that you had on your project?
Actually, the shoot went pretty well. It wasn't, I mean, it was pretty short and pretty pre-planned. So we actually didn't have a lot of challenges like on the shoot. I would say that well, I don't even know if it was a challenge, but it was just, I worked with a new DP for the first time. So it was just kind of working out how we're going to work together. And then same with the composer. They were both good experiences, but I guess they were just, I don't know, figuring out how we like to work together. I guess that would have been the biggest challenge.
Yeah, for sure. So Gavin, your film is also nominated for Technical Achievement in Production Design. So I'm curious, how important is the setting when you created this project, or really any of your films in general?
Pretty important. With this one, we tried our best to make a period piece, which made things a lot harder. So, yeah, I guess the main location, we rented an Airbnb, this old house that is a very common filming spot in the Saskatoon area. But that kind of fits like the period setting. And then I just went on Google and looked at a bunch of like fancy steakhouses and tried to find like the one that I thought like looked the oldest. And then we reached out and they were cool enough to let us film there for a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't really have a production designer. We were just kind of flying by the seat of our pants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super interesting. Rob, turning it over to you here for a question. Sound seems to play a really large part in your film. Was that something that was initially thought about, or was that something that came up strictly in post?
No, I'm always thinking about that. That's kind of my background, is I used to work in post-production sound design. And I'm also, like, I do all the music for our stuff too. So I used to be a musician, still kind of am, but used to be as well. But it's always just a big thing for me, is just making the music, like making music, making sound design, all that kind of stuff. It has to be of a certain level, or else I will hate it forever. So I still already hate it forever, but I mean, it's as good as it's gonna get for me. So, but it's always top of mind for me, just because that's my background. That's kind of where I came from.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, that's really cool. Marzia, I'm curious, what inspired you to write and create a film about an intergenerational relationship? Why a grandma and her grandson?
Well, actually, the script is, if I say precisely, how was it about? It's the grandma is coming from Britain, and grandson is Asian. So they're totally different. The gender, the race, everything.
Mm-hmm.
But so I couldn't manage to find actors specifically for the characters I want. So I just was two people with too many differences, but they are a family, and that is exactly what keeps them together. And I didn't have too much differences with my grandparents, but since we were from different generations and they passed away, I had lots of, kind of quarrels with them. I was so naughty, and I was just pestering them a lot. So maybe that's what made my story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really cool to get some insight there. Dylan, I really loved the underwater type shots in your project, and I'm curious to get some insight into how you came up with those ideas, and also how maybe you actually executed on those.
Sure. So shooting underwater is not safe or easy to do, and we definitely did not have the budget to do it right. So we did it the very independent way, where we put my camera in a fish tank that I bought for this specific use. And me and my DP on the project, we created a system where one of us is always holding on the fish tank and operating the fish tank, and the other person's operating the camera. And the fish tank goes under the water, other than the lip. You just keep it above. The camera's angled down a little bit, and then we're in the shallow end and our actors are in the deep end. And our actors would swim into the spot that we lit for our shots. And to get the look and everything, we tarped the whole back. We were in a pool. We tarped the whole pool with black. Actually, Gavin was one of the people that helped tarp the pool.
It was awful tarping the pool.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he complains to me every day. Just kidding. Where the idea came from, kind of, I love underwater shots. Part of it was in the song. There's a lyric about that struggling with mental health and depression and what these teens are going through can sometimes feel like drowning. And to me, the story is very literal, just like a more literal narrative. And I wanted a kind of surreal visual that kind of brought all the teens together through, because they're all going through different kind of traumatic experiences and stuff. And the imagery of them kind of drowning is like they feel like there's no way out. They feel suffocated and they need to get out of that situation. So it's the visual metaphor of the project. But, yeah.
Very cool. Mike, in your project, the visuals are very visceral. Could you tell us a little bit about how you came to select those specific images of nature for that project?
Yeah, it was really about patience, I guess. So the amount of time just to actually like look at the light and see how it travels, sometimes through like a crack of wood, or how it filters through leaves, or how it shapes a rooster. I just had to sit and watch for a while. And so I would take notes during certain times of the day and then return to those spaces and shoot, because I was just paying attention to the weather, paying attention to the light. So if I knew that the light was striking that piece of wood at 10:30 the right way, I know it would do the same thing the next day. So I would set up the shot accordingly, and then I would do certain effects perhaps to that shot. So some of the flashing is actually 2 or 3 superimpositions.
Mm.
So I would shoot it and then rewind the film and then shoot something else to create multiple layers on the image. So it was really a lot about just observing the light and then just being patient when I shot it. So it was also a lot of note taking.
Mhm.
So when I was doing kind of those staggered superimpositions, I had to figure out the timing of it and calculating like, okay, the duration for the shot was so-and-so seconds. So if I wanted to bring in another shot over top of that and kind of mat it and compose it in the frame, I would have to then think about that duration and where the previous shot landed. So doing little drawings in my notebook, just so I know where the first image was, so then I could place the second image and then the third image. So yeah, a little bit of note-taking was involved.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Jeffrey and Jeremy, there's no dialogue in your film. So can you maybe explain how you came to the decision to tell your story this way?
Well, we first made our first Western for the One Take Super 8, so we wouldn't have access to any dialogue because the score has to be sent in unknowing what the film looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a really big fan of The Naked Island, which is a Japanese film with no dialogue, and I think it's a very beautiful piece, and it's very powerful. And I thought, we can tell a story without dialogue, it's all the better. And Ava Wild's scores just really bring them together, and she's a personal friend, so bring her involved. And I think she's done a few other projects since with other people, so networking and bring talented people involved.
Mm-hmm. For sure, yeah. Very cool. And Dianne, so I read that your film was originally actually shot in color. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the reasons that you decided to make it black and white, or what that maybe symbolizes.
Sure. So it was originally shot in color. The colors are actually quite beautiful. But symbolically, I wanted to make the film black and white because the black and white represents a blanket that covers everything. And there's actually like a book that goes with the film that was part of my thesis. And in the book, I would take a color photograph and make a duplicate copy black and white and lay it over top, and then erase and bring true color through to reveal truth. So for example, like in Métis culture, yellow in the Métis sash is like prosperity for the future. So we have to think about the future and the animals and, where are we going? So in the film, I kept everything muted, like black and white, because I feel as though we have a long ways to go. We are starting to introduce, the buffalo back to the land, and, there are places for wolves, but they're still calling the wolves, and we're still, hurting the land. And so I just wanted to keep it muted as a symbolic blanket. And, blankets in Indigenous culture, are about healing. And so I thought, well, maybe this film is a step towards healing. And that's why I did it. So it's very symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's, yeah, I love that. That's really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
Another question for the group. How, or what is it like, I guess, for filmmakers to make films in Saskatchewan? Any
I'll
people
go.
want to jump on that one? Go for it, Dianne.
I've been here a long time. I never left. I was one of the filmmakers that stayed. I love making films in Saskatchewan. There are so many locations to make films, and we have so many stories here. I mean, if you live in Saskatchewan, you could write a story a week. I mean, just about going outside and encountering a neighbor. I mean, there's always stories here. We have a lot to share. The landscape is gorgeous. You can go shoot in the grasslands and see for miles, and then you can go to L'Orange and it's like forest. It's like there's so many different places to go to film. So yeah, I love shooting in Saskatchewan. I mean, I'll date myself, but I've been making films for 25 years here. So I'm okay with it. And I'm not leaving.
Yeah, just to echo Diane's point, you can shoot in so many different places and you can get a different look everywhere you go. And you can also, the people here are nice enough that if you don't have a lot of money, you could be like, hey, can I just shoot in your restaurant? Can I shoot in this? Can I shoot in that? We'll give you a little shout out in the credits and, try to get your name out there. And people are usually fine with it. And in other cities I found, they're way more savvy where they'll be like, no, it's going to be like $1,300 for you to shoot here for like 2 hours, man. And you need permits, you need all this stuff. And so it's a little more laid back, which is nice, but you can also, there's a wide palette that you can shoot on. So it's great. I love shooting here, honestly.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Dylan?
I don't know how to answer the question. No, it's great. I think it has its positives and some negatives. I won't talk about negatives. No, I'll echo. I do think there's a lot of benefits to being in a city that doesn't fully embrace film, because when you do come to someone to use their house, or as they were saying, like a restaurant or whatever, people are like, oh, that sounds so cool. Someone wants to shoot a movie here. Like there's a real excitement to it where, I've shot in Vancouver and LA, and it's a struggle sometimes if you don't have the money to get the permits and all that. And I was supposed to just shoot a project in Toronto, and I was like, oh, it'll be a dream. Everything's going to be so much easier. And there were so many things available as options, but the price of everything was so expensive, and there's different challenges no matter where you are. So yeah, I think there's a lot that's great about working here. And yeah, just like the collaborations that you get here, I think people care a little bit more to be on your project because it feels more special. It's not like, oh, I'm doing another one or I'll be on it next day. Like when I get to work for friends of mine, it's just like, I don't know, it's a special opportunity because it's, I don't know, it feels more precious here because maybe our industry is a little smaller and yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
No, absolutely. Small but mighty, as shows with all of you in this panel. Anyone else have any thoughts about making films in Saskatchewan? Jeffrey, Jeremy, Mike, Gavin, Marzia?
I left. I've been making films probably as long as Dianne. Well, maybe Dianne has a few years on me. But I left during the boom. I went to Montreal and studied and shot some films there. But most of my work, I still travel back to Saskatchewan to shoot. And it was mostly because I appreciated the light in the landscape. Nothing unlike it anywhere else really in Canada. And I've traveled all over Canada. Yeah, not to kind of dwell, like as Dylan's saying, on the negatives, but it'd be good to have a little bit of support from our government to just allow for an industry to thrive and survive. Because if we have a healthy industry, then mid-level, even small-level films can do very well, and we can pay people. Right. And I do appreciate everyone's work ethic on all the films, not only for these films here, but every film that's made in this province. But it would be great if we can actually allow for people to make a living out of it. And so I'm kind of done with the freebies. I would appreciate that we can actually live off our craft.
Mhm.
So.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely agree with you. How did you, I mean, in question to the whole group, really, how did you get started making films in the first place? What kind of things inspired you or caught your eye to, want to tell stories in this way? Why don't we start with Gavin?
I started making stuff in high school because just so I didn't have to do essays, they give you the option to do an essay or video. And of course, me and my friends wanted to do videos. So we did videos for like Macbeth, Beowulf, I don't know, well, that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, I just never stopped. And then the big thing, I watched Dogtooth, and then it was over. And then Dogtooth changed my life.
Amazing. Jeffrey or Jeremy, what about you guys?
Well, I was always painting, and then I found video to be another way to tell stories. So I was like taking it in the university, so I made it my minor alongside with painting, and I just took off with it.
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved stories. I've always loved creating my own fantasies and narratives. And I originally went to school for game design, but I started working at Cineplex, and I met Jeff, and we started watching, movies, and I started hanging out with more art and film oriented people. And eventually I kind of just, fell in love with the craft of, cinema. And I just fell in love. Yeah, that's how I got into filmmaking.
What about you, Marzia?
Sorry, I'm just thinking about your previous question to think what was really interesting to shoot in Saskatchewan. Can I answer that?
Oh, yeah.
I found the answer. Yes. And my I said everything went very smooth and great. That I was thinking, oh my God, it was great. And then there was nothing hard. But before that, I was looking for crew members, and it was so hard to find professional crew. I don't mean that there is none here. There are, but the tax credit does send most of them to other provinces. I don't know if I'm right. And I'm kind of new in Canada. I can't really speak about that. But yeah, that's what I experienced about crew members. And sorry, what was your question?
I'm just curious about how you got started, or what influenced you to want to start making films.
In general, or here, the movie that we made?
In general, or you can speak to the project that you made as well.
Yeah, so I started my journey as theater actress. I studied literature. I got my master in English literature, so I used to write plays and stuff. I used to act, but I was like, oh my God, making a movie? No, how is it possible? I don't know anything. So I came here to go to film school, and I finished my studies, and I started script writing, and I moved to Saskatchewan and saw this beautiful sky and thought, I'm going to make a movie about Saskatchewan. And yeah, that's it.
Amazing. Anyone else? Dylan, maybe, or Rob, Dianne, Mike?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Dianne.
Who was speaking? Mike? Mike, you go.
I'll go after Dianne and then Rob. I think you both were before me.
Oh, okay. What was the question? Oh, how did I get started in film? Oh my gosh, it was so long ago, right? So, I mean, if I went back to high school days, I was like the photographer. I was always taking photos. I knew everything about a dark room, like the back of my hand. And then I went to school. I wanted to be a journalist. And then I was like, no, I don't want to be a journalist. Then I went into theater and I was like, oh, I don't like theater. And I was a horrible actress. And then one day I was sitting in an action movie. And I will tell you the story. I was watching an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. And I wanted to go to Hollywood and make action movies. And that didn't happen because I was like, no, there was no way. I actually got influenced in my last year of film school by an experimental filmmaker, and I learned to make films for me. And I stuck with it all these years. I learned to not worry about what other people think, and it's a very difficult thing to do. You have to get a thick skin when you're a filmmaker, as probably everyone here knows. And that's kind of how I started. I just, finished theater while I was doing film, and then I just kept making films. So that's how I started.
I think Rob was going next.
Oh yeah, I just want to say, like, I didn't go to film school or anything. I just watched movies. That's all I did when I was a kid. I watched like 2 movies a day for like probably 9 years. Like, I just watched movies constantly, and I'm kind of like that, where I just wanted to figure out how to make them. But I always thought it was kind of stupid. I was like, that's a stupid thing to do. Like, people will just laugh at you if you tell them that. So I decided to go into like making albums and records, which is even stupider now. But so I got into school for that, and I moved out to Vancouver, and I was there for a while, and I came back and got a job doing post-production here, like I said earlier. And people would bring these movies in to get the sound done, and I'd be like, these are so awful. Like, I don't know what you're thinking, trying to get these, like, the sound's not going to fix anything in this. And so I was like, man, if these guys can do that, then I can certainly do something. And me and my brother used to make jokes about how, like, that'd be funny if like this happened in a movie or this happened. So we just started writing them down, and then we realized no one's going to make them if you just write them down. So we just started making them. Like, we started renting a camera from the Filmpool. Actually, that's how I got started. I lied and said I'd used the camera before. I'd never touched one. And Bernie High gave me a camera, and he's like, here you go, man, just chill and make a movie. And so, yeah, that's how it started. I made a lot of terrible stuff for like years, but eventually I figured out how to like finish it and plan it. And then I just kind of like worked backwards. Like, I figured out how to use a camera, and then I just kind of worked backwards and everything. And yeah, that's how you end up with a movie about a hamburger, I guess. Good stuff.
Amazing. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, so my dad was a cinephile, so I just kind of shared a lot of time with him watching really awful comedies and horror movies. And it left an impression on me. And I think a lot of the horror movies somehow seeps into my soundtracks. Even how I like think about framing my images, it's like horror movies. And then in high school, I just want to shout out to Mr. Dufresne, my history teacher, started showing us films from Godard and Truffaut, and it like blew me away. And I think it, like a lot of those works, like as teenagers, because those films were about angst and there was like an urgency, really spoke to me. So I decided then to enroll in university at the film department at the U of R. And I kind of, I don't know, I don't think I was incredibly happy in my first couple of years in the film department until I met that experimental filmmaker that Dianne was talking about. And I'll mention him, Hryciuk Kerr, who really advocated about the personal vision. And he started showing us work that I was never introduced to before, and it was mind-blowing. It really opened up my way of seeing and hearing the world. And so because of him and a few other teachers, Don Hall, a photographer, who really taught me how to compose and frame a shot, I owed a lot of gratitude to those 2 individuals.
Very, very cool. And Dylan, well, what about yourself?
I have a very long-winded journey that I'll try to keep as short as possible. I've always just been fascinated by any sort of art and medium and whatever. When I was very young, I just drew all the time. I would take photos. I guess the first step was I was taking photos of my action figures and making stories out of the printed photos. And then I kind of moved on from that to, I was really into Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon. And so I was creating my own version of that game and creating cards and characters and stories and whatever. And then I moved on from that and I went into wanting to be a writer and writing novels. And I was writing a novel in grade like 5 or 6. And then eventually I moved on from that and found a program called RPG Maker, which was for building little video games. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be a game designer. This is what I want to do. And then I moved on from that and I found stop motion from, I don't know, Tim Burton, YouTube and whatever. And I got really, really into stop motion and started animating in elementary school to the point where teachers in high school were showing people that my older brothers, like in high school, I was showing people my older brother knew in high school, like, hey, my teacher just showed like my friends your work at school and stuff, just really weird. And it was grade 8 that we had a project, weirdly enough, also about bullying. And we had to do a video project for that. And me and my friends, and maybe it's just my personality, but we took it way over the top, where everyone else was filming just like, oh, we'll just film this skit like in this room right now because that's where we are. Just talk, we're done. Me and my friends wrote a script. We were using the TV dolly as our camera dolly. We had all the shots planned. We spent multiple days. We were getting kids from other classes to act in it and be extras and stuff. And ever since, and maybe it's because it's a little easier than stop motion, but ever since it was like, that's what I want to do. And then I had a high school teacher that really, because I didn't think I could pursue it, it seemed, as Rob said, it seemed like a stupid thing to try to pursue. It seemed very questionable as a career choice. And so it was a hobby. And my teacher saw something in me, I guess, and he really pushed me towards pursuing it. And I went to film school and I've been trying to pursue film ever since.
I think all of you are doing a little bit more than trying, I would say. One more question to round off the night of this awesome panel. It's sometimes that doesn't make sense. It's oftentimes said that the message is the medium. So why did you choose to make a short film instead of another format of film or really any other kind of artistic creative pursuit?
You want me to speak? I'll speak.
Go for it.
I love short films. I've always loved short films. Maybe it's my short attention span. I think you can tell fantastic stories in short films. And even without, a lot of my older work is very wordy. There's a lot of narration in them as well. But I found that with my latest film, In Lieu Powatomic, the silence and the minimal sound that just comes through of nature and the environment just builds a much more powerful project because it is short and it's to the point and it can hold your attention. I mean, if it was a feature-length film, I mean, I think a lot about audience as well. And I think, there'll be a specific audience that could sit through a feature-length film like that. But and I think about my family and my friends, and I'm like, short always keeps their attention and it keeps my attention. Even though I'm making them for me, I do prefer short films. There's something about the short film. I've always loved it. I remember even back in film school when Richard Kerr was teaching the experimental film class, we had to keep a journal and everything I wrote in that book was short. Like it was all about short films for me. I just, the really, really long experimental films I found difficult to sit through, but anything under 15 minutes, I was like, right on, I can do this. So yeah, I think it's important. Short films are important because we can get our message across. A 3-second film to a 20-minute film is fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you there. What about you, Mike?
So you're bringing McLuhan in, eh? Well, for me personally, yeah, the short film, well, film for me is fleeting. There's an interesting thing that happens when you actually work with the medium and you capture an image and then it kind of disappears into your memory and leaves a lasting impression. And so I try to gravitate as much as I can when I'm making work to work on film, to be hands-on, because I like the process-based approach to shooting on a medium that requires a lot of attention and observation of light, that I don't know what the immediate image will be. I have to wait. So there's this time of like the shooting to the remembering of what you shot to then the reflection to when you actually physically see the image after you processed it. So I like this idea of duration in my work, the duration of time when you shoot something to when it finishes. And also with film, specifically, I also like its deficiencies in different ways. I like the textures, I like the scratches, I like the residue from the water and the chemicals. There's something that brings a surface tension to the content that I'm capturing. So that's pretty much why I still continue to work on film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really unique perspective from, actually working with the film. Anyone else have any thoughts about, yeah, for sure, Marzia.
So I would say in terms of creativity, it's a challenge. It's very short. I mean, imagine like 6 minutes, 5 minutes, and you have to have a simple story that you're going to say something important in it. And yeah, so every second matters, right? And my movie is like, but the dialogues are heard only in 4 minutes of it. So I had to manage to put everything that is really necessary, And so not to make the audience bored or yawn or change their seat, And the second reason might be the budget, not mine. Of course, it's the budget, right? So yeah, you want to make a movie and you just have a day for shoot 12 hours, maybe you just have to do 3 crew members. So that's the money you have, and let's go for a short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. What about Jeffrey and Jeremy?
Yeah, sure. So I think we made this particular film kind of just to like challenge ourselves. We were doing a one take Super 8 on one day, and then the other day we were going to make this. So it was really just a matter of limited time. But I also think like a short story told well is better than a good story that's dragged out. So that's why we stick to short stories for the time being.
Yeah, and they're good practice. Like each film gets longer. Like we're at about like 25 minutes for our last 2 shorts. So we're working our way longer. So it's just good practice. Mm-hmm. Just keep pushing out stories instead of just taking forever to make one.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. Gavin or Rob's unmuted. Looks like we're ready to go over there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, kind of adding on to their point, it's kind of about keeping the momentum going too a little bit, because you can work on like a longer project. Obviously, you need more time, way more money to make something that's way longer. And I think you can kind of lose the wind out of your sails a little bit if you don't kind of turn anything around. That's how I am anyway. I need to kind of constantly be working on something. Like in the non-COVID times anyway, it would be we're writing something, prepping something, shooting something, doing post on something, kind of all at the same time. And with short films, you can do that. You can't do that with 90 minutes, like a minimum 90-minute films. So, and for us as well, I just like working with my friends. Like this is kind of a friend project where everyone's just there for the love of it. And I do a lot of freelance stuff, music videos, like a lot more now than I used to. And it's not the same thing when you're doing that for like a client, but when it's me and the people I work with, like we just try to make each other laugh like as much as possible. And we take the script and we just don't really follow it. We just kind of go into weird tangents and stuff. And it kind of allows that freedom that you wouldn't get with a 90-minute thing, because you shoot it and it's 5 minutes long and you don't have to keep up continuity. You don't have to do any of those kind of things. You just have to make a short film, and it's the funnest medium to work in, I think. You just cut everything down to the bone and figure out how to do it, and it's great.
Totally. Dylan or Gavin, any other thoughts to this last question here?
Well, we kind of started doing shorter projects in between our larger projects, just to, like Rob was saying, like keep the momentum going. So yeah, that was really why we did this one, just to kind of get the gang back together to do something for a weekend, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they're fun just to they're a lot easier just to kind of play around and experiment with things, you know, on a 3-minute thing versus like a 70-minute thing. So.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Dylan, if you want to end us off, something poetic.
Something poetic. Could you imagine if I turned a client's 4-minute song into a feature film?
Yes.
Basically, yeah, I am the one who has my jobs are client based, so I can't do absolutely whatever I want or whatever. But I do try to work with clients that do give me a lot of freedom, and my whole business is based on me learning who I am as a storyteller while being able to make money, to slowly get to a point where I can make short films and hopefully eventually feature films and stuff. So I think short films and music videos are very impactful. I'm very moved by them. And just like film as a medium, the reason why I do film is because it's the art form that is, to me, the most entertaining and the most impactful. It's the stuff that I go to sleep and think about. I can't get images out of my head, whether they're terrifying or beautiful. And yeah, that's kind of why I do it. But I love it all. I love the commercial. I love the corporate. I love the music video, and eventually I'll love the feature film and short film. Yeah.
That was very poetic. That was a great way to end it off. And with that, we have come to the end of a really great panel. Thank you all very much for joining me this evening and speaking about your incredible projects. You can catch these talented filmmakers this Saturday at the SIFA Awards. This year, we're obviously going through COVID-19. So this year we are live streaming the SIFA Awards ceremony live from the SIFA website at www.sifa.ca. The fun starts at 7, and I look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you very much, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Sophie.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.